Picture this. You're walking through an old barn, dust particles dancing in the sunlight streaming through broken wooden slats. In the corner, covered by decades of grime and neglect, sits what looks like a pile of rusted metal. But to the trained eye, this isn't junk. This is treasure. This is a story waiting to be told, a dream car waiting to be reborn. Car restoration isn't just about fixing old vehicles. It's about resurrection. It's about taking something that most people would consider beyond saving and breathing life back into it. Today, we're going to dive deep into some of the most incredible restoration stories ever documented. Stories that will make you believe in miracles, question what's possible, and maybe even inspire you to see potential where others see only rust and ruin. Let's start with a story that literally involves fire and resurrection. On May 20th, 1999, disaster struck a car enthusiast's home. A gas leak caused a massive explosion that destroyed not just the house, but also the owner's prized possession, a 1971 Plymouth Hemi Cuda. When we say destroyed, we mean destroyed. The intense heat from the fire caused the torsion bar to break. The glass melted into twisted shapes. The fiberglass body became molten and warped beyond recognition. When the flames finally died down, all that remained was the bare frame of what was once one of only 42 automatic Hemi Cudas ever produced. Most people would have looked at that charred skeleton and seen nothing but scrap metal, but not this owner. He saw possibility. What followed was a 4-year journey that would test every limit of patience, skill, and determination. Every single component had to be sourced, rebuilt, or completely recreated. The team working on this project didn't just restore a car, they performed automotive archaeology, piecing together history from fragments and memories. The result was nothing short of miraculous. The Cuda rose from its own ashes, literally to become a perfect recreation of its former glory. Every detail was meticulously researched and recreated. The paint gleamed with the same intensity it had decades earlier. The engine roared with the same power that had made these cars legendary. This wasn't just restoration, this was resurrection. But fire isn't the only enemy that classic cars face. Sometimes the enemy is simply time itself. Take the story of a Lamborghini Huracan that became known as the Burnicon. This supercar started its second life as what most people would consider a total loss, a fire-damaged wreck that was purchased for just $40,000. To put that in perspective, a new Huracan cost well over $200,000. The team at B is for Build saw something different. They didn't just see a damaged Lamborghini, they saw an opportunity to create something that had never existed before. Instead of returning the car to its original specifications, they decided to give it a heart transplant that would make it faster than it had ever been. Out went the original Lamborghini engine, and in went a twin-turbocharged LS Chevy engine producing between 900 and 1,000 horsepower. But they didn't stop there. They also swapped out the automatic transmission for a manual gearbox, something that Lamborghini had never offered in the Huracan. The result was a car that could outrun almost anything on the road, including other Huracans that cost 5 times as much. The Burntaken became a sensation at SEMA 2019, where it was displayed with its custom wide body and exposed elements that showcased the incredible craftsmanship. This wasn't just a restoration, it was a complete reimagining of what a supercar could be. Now let's talk about patience, real patience, the kind that spans decades. In a dusty garage somewhere, a 1967 Shelby GT 500 Mustang sat motionless for 40 years. This car was parked when disco was king, and it didn't move again until the new millennium was well underway. The owner, Bob, had always planned to restore it someday. Someday became 4 decades. When Bob finally decided to bring his Mustang back to life, he discovered what every long-term car owner fears. Time had not been kind, but Bob was determined. He found a professional restoration team and gave them a simple instruction: bring it back to perfection, whatever it takes. What it took was extraordinary. At some points during the restoration, Bob was spending $10,000 per week, but the investment paid off. When the restoration was complete, the beautiful green Mustang wasn't just a showpiece, it was a daily driver. Bob had made a vow that this car would never sit unused again. He drove it regularly, taking it to car shows and cruise nights. This restoration wasn't just about bringing back a car, it was about making up for lost time. Sometimes the most incredible restoration stories involve cars that are worth more than most people's houses. Take the Ferrari 250 GTO that sat forgotten in a dusty garage for years. The 250 GTO is already one of the most valuable cars ever made, but this particular example had been lost to the world. Car enthusiasts had given up hope of ever seeing it again. The restoration of this Ferrari was more than just mechanical work. It was automotive archaeology. Every component had to be authenticated, every detail verified against historical records. The stakes were enormous because authenticity is everything in the world of classic Ferraris. One wrong part, one incorrect detail, and millions of dollars in value could disappear. When the restoration was complete and the car went to auction, it sold for a record-breaking $70 million. That's not just the price of a car, that's the price of a piece of automotive history. This restoration didn't just save a car from obscurity, it preserved a piece of racing heritage for future generations. But you don't need a $70 million Ferrari to have an incredible restoration story. Sometimes the most inspiring transformations happen with more humble machines. Consider the story of a 1969 Corvette L88 that was discovered in a storage unit, untouched for decades. The L88 was Chevrolet's ultimate performance package, but only 216 were ever made. Finding one is like discovering buried treasure. This particular L88 had been stored away and forgotten, but its rarity made it incredibly valuable. The restoration process was painstaking because original L88 parts are almost impossible to find. Every component had to be carefully evaluated, restored, or recreated to exact specifications. When the restoration was finished, this Corvette was worth over $3 million. But more than its monetary value, it represented the preservation of American automotive history. The L88 was a race car that happened to be street legal, and this restoration ensured that future generations would be able to experience what American performance was like in its golden age. The world of barn finds is filled with stories that seem too good to be true. Cars that have been sitting untouched for decades, preserved by accident rather than design. One of the most famous involves a Shelby Cobra 427 that was discovered in a rural barn. The Cobra is already one of the most valuable American sports cars ever made, but finding an original 427 is like winning the lottery. This particular Cobra had been sitting in the same spot for decades, covered by dust and forgotten by time. But underneath that layer of neglect was an authentic piece of automotive history. The discovery sent shockwaves through the classic car community because original Cobras are so rare that every single one is supposedly accounted for. The restoration of this Cobra was a delicate balance between preservation and renewal. Too much restoration, and you risk destroying the car's authenticity. Too little, and you can't safely drive or display it. The team working on this project had to make hundreds of decisions about what to restore, what to preserve, and what to replace. When the restoration was complete, this Cobra was worth over $2 million. But beyond its monetary value, it represented something even more precious. A direct connection to the golden age of American motorsports, when cars like this dominated racetracks around the world. Not every restoration story has a happy ending, though. Sometimes the process reveals just how far gone a car really is. Rust is the silent killer of classic cars, and it's often worse than it appears on the surface. Many restoration projects that start with optimism end with the heartbreaking realization that there simply isn't enough of the original car left to save. But then there are the miracle saves. Cars that look absolutely hopeless, but somehow get brought back to life through sheer determination and skill. Take the Mercedes-Benz 300 SL Gullwing that was found in a garage after decades of neglect. The 300 SL is one of the most iconic cars ever made, with its distinctive upward opening doors and timeless design. The restoration team faced challenges that would have defeated lesser enthusiasts. Rust had eaten through critical structural components. The interior was destroyed by moisture and time. The engine was seized solid, but piece by piece, component by component, they brought it back. New metal was fabricated to replace what Rust had claimed. The interior was completely recreated using original materials and techniques. The finished car was worth over $1 million, but its true value was in what it represented, the triumph of human determination over the forces of decay and time. This wasn't just a restoration. It was a statement that no car is truly beyond saving if you have enough skill, patience, and resources. The British have their own restoration stories, and few are more compelling than the Jaguar E-Type. When the E-Type was introduced in 1961, Enzo Ferrari himself called it the most beautiful car ever made. But beauty doesn't protect against rust, and many E-Types have been found in various states of decay over the years. One of the most famous E-Type barn finds involved a Series 1 car that had been stored for 40 years. The owner had parked it with the intention of restoring it someday, but life got in the way. When it was finally rediscovered, it was like finding a time capsule. The car was exactly as it had been left decades earlier. The restoration of this E-Type was as much about archaeology as it was about automotive repair. Every layer of dust told a story. Every component revealed something about how the car had been used and maintained. The restoration team didn't just bring the car back to life. They preserved its history and the stories it contained. When the restoration was complete, this E-Type was worth over $200,000. But its real real value was in what it represented, the preservation of British automotive artistry and the dreams of the person who had originally bought it new, decades earlier. The tools and techniques used in car restoration have evolved dramatically over the years. What once required months of hand fabrication can now be accomplished in days using modern technology. 3D scanning allows restorers to create perfect reproductions of parts that no longer exist. Computer-controlled machining can recreate components with tolerances that exceed original factory specifications. But technology hasn't replaced the human element that makes restoration special. The eye that can see potential in a pile of rust. The hands that can shape metal and bring dead engines back to life. The patience to spend years on a single project because the end result's worth the effort. These human qualities are what transform restoration from mere repair work into something approaching art. The restoration community is filled with people who understand that they're not just fixing cars, they're preserving history. Every restored vehicle is a time machine that allows us to experience what driving was like in a different era. The stories we've shared today represent just a fraction of the restoration projects happening around the world. In garages and workshops everywhere, dedicated enthusiasts are bringing forgotten cars back to life. Some of these projects will become famous, like the ones we've discussed. Others will remain personal victories, known only to their owners. What all these stories share is the belief that every car has value, that every vehicle tells a story worth preserving. Whether it's a $1 million Ferrari or a humble family sedan, the act of restoration is an act of faith. Faith that the past is worth preserving, and that sometimes the most beautiful transformations come from the most unlikely beginnings. The next time you see an old car sitting in a field or tucked away in a garage, don't just see rust and decay, see possibility, see history, see a story waiting to be told. Because in the world of car restoration, today's junk really can become tomorrow's dream car. Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey through some of the most amazing car restoration stories ever told. If you enjoyed learning about these incredible transformations, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more fascinating automotive content. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode, and let us know in the comments which restoration story impressed you the most. Until next time, keep dreaming about the possibilities hidden in every old car you see,